Hey everyone, welcome back to Code of the Row. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to set up Ninja Interaction. The documentation is in the description below if you want to follow the link and follow along. So we're going to be going over quite a few things, which is going to be animations with a treasure chest, a door, and just how to interact in general and show a UI prompt. So let's go ahead and cover these. So the first thing I want to do is head over to Edit, go to Plugins, and then look for Ninja Interaction. If it is not enabled already, go ahead and hit this check mark and restart your project. So now the first thing we're going to need to do is actually set up our object channels and trace channels. So I'm going to go over to Edit, Project Settings, and then in the engine down here, I'm going to look for Collision. And now in the object channel up here, I'm going to go ahead and create a new object channel. And I'm going to call this something like Interaction Object, like so. So let me go ahead and open this or expand this a little bit. And the default response will actually be set to ignore. And I'll go ahead and click accept to create this and you'll see it pop up down here. And I'll go ahead and add a new trace channel. And for the name, I will call this interaction trace. And the default response will also be ignore for this. So first, I want to talk about the interaction object. So the interaction object is going to be able to represent any actor in the world that can be detected as an interaction target. And we're going to be using the interaction trace in order to validate the line of sight between the scanner and the interaction target. So in this case, my player will be scanning what's in front of me. And below our interaction object and interaction trace, we have this preset section down here. I'm going to go ahead and just expand this and you'll see all the presets that Unreal Engine already comes with. And we're going to select new. And I'm going to call this one interaction source. And for the collision, we're going to do query only, like so. So no physics collision. And the object type will set to the interaction object that we created up here. And the description is going to be scans for interactable actors. And now I'm just going to click on this checkbox way up here to set everything on ignore. And I'll go ahead and scroll down and look for the interaction object and set this to overlap. And I'll go ahead and click accept to add this. And now we see this in our presets as so. And now let's go ahead and create one for the interaction target. So same thing, I'm going to go ahead and click new, call this interaction target, and then collision is going to be query only again. Object type will be the interaction object. And now for this one, I'm going to go ahead and click ignore over here. So it sets everything to ignore. And I want to set the interaction trace to block and the interaction object to block as well. And go ahead and click accept to add this. So now we see the two down here. So now let's create a state tree that's going to define the flow of interaction when triggered by the source. So what I'm going to do is actually just go ahead and create a new folder, and I'll just call this interaction for the purpose of this tutorial. So now in my interaction folder, I'm going to right click, go over to artificial intelligence, and we have this option called state tree. Under all classes, we'll see this one called Ninja Interaction Component Schema. I'm going to go ahead and select this. I'm going to go ahead and call this st_interaction_generic, like so. I'll double click to open this up, and now we need to add the interaction state evaluator to the tree and bind the interaction manager property. So I'll go ahead and add a state, and this state will be called the execute interaction. So first I want to go ahead and add an evaluator, and this evaluator will simply be the interaction state over here. And let's go ahead and actually just select the interaction manager to bind it right here. Leave the rest as is, and you can go ahead and change the colors if you want. So for example, if I were to change this to like a green, you'll see that it changes up here. And this is just in case you want to color code your UIs or something if you're working with multiple state trees. So now with the execute interaction selected, I'm going to go ahead and go down to where it says tasks. And with task, I'm going to click on this plus sign on the right side and look for something called trigger target behavior, like so. And let's go ahead and actually just bind these. So I'll bind this to the interaction manager, bind the target actor to the interaction state target actor, like so. And I'll go ahead and change the smart object claim handle to the smart and bind it over to this interaction.state.smart object claim handle. And now I want to simply add a transition. So for transition, I want to make sure the trigger is going to be on state succeeded. Then I want to transition to the tree succeeded. And let's add another transition. So I'm going to click on this plus sign again. And for the trigger, this will be set to on state failed and transition to tree failed. So this is pretty much just going to tell us that basically if the interaction worked, then this is a success. If it failed, then tree failed. Go ahead and click compile and save. And now we need to create a smart object definition. Back in my level blueprint, I'm going to go back to my interaction folder and go ahead and create a smart object asset. So head over to the artificial intelligence tab and look for the smart object definition. I'm going to call it something like SO underscore chest. And now I actually need to go ahead and import some assets. So this would be a good time to pause and go ahead and import. Personally, I'm just going to import a couple Cinti assets just because they have everything that I need. All right, so I've gone ahead and imported some Cinti assets and sidekicks and so on into Unreal Engine. So now let's go ahead and actually just create a treasure chest that can open up when I interact with it. So back in my smart object underscore chest, which was simply created by going right click, artificial intelligence, creating smart object definition, I've gone ahead and just added this bottom part of a chest. And this is pretty much where I'm going to be setting up how to interact with the chest. So you can go ahead and add an object actor class or an object mesh path. I'm just going to add this chest part to the mesh path itself. And now under smart objects, I'm going to look for the slot section down here and go ahead and click on this plus sign and expand this. And we're going to have a lot of options to configure. So for the name, I'm going to go ahead and just call this something like open. You can change the color to whatever you want. It'll change the color of this yellow circle or rectangle and so on. I'm going to set this to a rectangle and change the size of it. And I'm going to go ahead and rotate this by 90 degrees just to point this in the direction of where my character will be interacting with this. So I'm going to set it to 70 for the size. I'm going to offset it so it kind of goes in front of the chest a little bit so you can interact it from the front only, not when you go behind the chest. You'll have to be directly looking at it. So I'm going to add an activity tag now, and this activity is just going to be an interaction tag that's going to tell this chest to open. So I'm going to look for interaction type open, like so. And we have this runtime tag where we can leave blank over here, but I actually want to go ahead and set a behavior definition and click on this plus sign and go ahead and add the gameplay behavior smart object behavior definition. Go ahead and expand this, scroll down, and for the gameplay behavior config, I'm going to set it to execute interaction. And now I'm going to expand this, and for the interaction type tag, I'm going to look for the type, which is going to be open. And then for the priority tag, I'll leave this as primary. And for the display text, I'll leave it as interact. And for the interaction tree, I'm going to select that state tree we created earlier called state tree interaction generic. Duration, if I leave it at 0, it's instant. If I leave it at something like 2, it'll take 2 seconds and so on. I'll just leave it at 0 to be instant. And I'll go ahead and hit save. And now I want to go ahead and create a new actor. So I'll right click, go to blueprint class, and under all classes, I'm going to look for the Ninja interaction actor. And in this case, I'll select the static mesh because I believe my chest is a static mesh. And I'll just go ahead and call this BP underscore chest. Double click to open this up. And you'll see on the top right, the parent class is Ninja Interaction Actor Static Mesh. So now what I need to do is head over here and I'm going to go ahead and select this interaction target. And for the smart object definition, I'm just going to set it to this SO underscore chest that we created like so. And then for the mesh, I'm going to go ahead and select the chest piece. So the bottom one in this case, and leave it as so. And let's see. So this looks pretty good. It already aligned pretty well for me. Go ahead and click save. And now all I want to do here is go ahead and add a box collision. And this box collision should just align with how my chest looks, pretty much as close as possible, just to make it as accurate as possible. I'm going to turn these off over here and just let's get it right as much to the box as I can. So all the way to the bottom, just shrink it down a bit. And this is fine. I don't want to be too nitpicky on this just yet. And I'll go ahead and actually, while the box is selected, I'm going to actually unparent it from this. While the box is selected, I'm going to look for the collisions tag or collision section. And what I want to do is change collision presets to the interaction target because this is the target that we're going to be interacting with. And we can go ahead and hit compile, save, go to the event graph, and we can just go ahead and get rid of these functions. And if we want to debug, we can go ahead and go to interface and then select the interaction actor interface. And let's do something like handle target registered, unregistered. Let's also do focus applied and focus removed. I'm just going to go ahead and add some print strings. So for registered, I'm just going to type in registered. Unregistered will be unregistered. And then I'll type in focus replied for the focus applied event and focus removed and so on. And this is pretty much just going to debug for us of when our character is in range and basically looking at the target and so on. And this looks pretty good to me. And now that we've set up our item that we want to interact with, I need to add a couple things to my BP third person character to tell the item that I can interact with it. So I'm going to go to my character, which in this case is the interaction source. And I'm going to go ahead and add a component, which is going to be our interaction manager. And I also want to add a sphere collision, which is going to serve as our interaction scan sphere. And from here, I want to go ahead and increase the size as large as you want in order to actually determine when and where you can start interacting with objects. So I'll leave mine pretty big. I want a pretty large line of sight and basically be capable to interact with things a bit further away, or at least see that I can start interaction with it. And with the interaction scan sphere selected, I want to look for the component tag, and go ahead and add this text, which is the interaction.component.interactable scan. And I'm also going to go ahead and see the collision over here and change the preset to interaction source. And now if you want to determine your focus by proximity, we're going to go ahead and add a focus collider. So in this case, I will go ahead and add that as well, in addition to my interaction scan sphere. So I'm going to go ahead and add a box collider in this case, which is going to be directly in front of my character. So I'll go ahead and look for a box collision and just place this right here. Let's go ahead and expand it to the size of my character. And that looks pretty good to me. And for this one, what I want to do is just go ahead and change my collision preset to custom, and then change my object type to interaction object. I'm actually going to unparent this from my interaction scan sphere. And now I'm going to set everything to ignore over here. And the only thing I want to overlap with is my interaction object. So I can go ahead and hit compile and save. And I actually need to add a component tag, which is very important, which will be the interaction.component.interactable focus. And now I need to actually give the gameplay ability of interacting to my character. So Ninja Interaction does come with these abilities, so you can just simply just assign it, and it's as easy as that. I'm going to go back to where my gas setup is, where my abilities are for my player, and add 2 default gameplay abilities. Go ahead and expand these, and I'm going to look for the find interactable actor, like here, or like so. I'm going to give it the find interactable actor and the execute interaction. And now I can go ahead and hit Control Save. And now let's actually go ahead and try this out. So I'm going to just go ahead and go to my interaction where I left my BB chest and leave this here. You can see this little square where I'm allowed to interact it from. Go ahead and click play. And now when I run up to this, it says registered. And when I go really close to it on the top left, it'll say focus applied. That means my box is hitting this. And unregistered is when I go out of the box, out of the range. Registered will show up once I'm in that range to interact, and focus applied, and so on. So now let's add a couple things. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually go ahead and add a little UI that's going to say press E to interact. So in order to add an interaction widget, I'm going to go ahead and go to my BP underscore chest, and I'm going to click add and look for the Ninja interaction widget. I'll leave the name as is and unparent this. I keep accidentally parenting it. And now I need to actually create a widget class. So I'm going to go back to my folder, right click, go to user interface. I'm going to go ahead and right click, go to user interface and create a widget blueprint. I'm going to select user widget and just call this something like WBP underscore interact and double click to open this up. Now, there isn't too much that I really need to do here. I'm just simply going to add a text and just go ahead and drag this here. And this text will just say press E to open, like so. I'm going to go ahead and change this to desired on screen. There might be a little bit of a better way to do this, so just let me know in the comments if there's an easier way of doing this. But let's go ahead and hit compile. And now I need to add a view model and view binding. So I'm going to click on view model and go ahead and add one. And I'm going to add the view model underscore interaction. So go over to Ninja interaction base view model. And now I'm going to select interaction target and click select. And now I need to go to the view bindings. And now when I click on this view model underscore interaction target, click creation type and change this to resolver. And the resolver will actually be the interaction resolver, like so. And now from here, I'm going to head over to my graph and I'm going to head over to my class settings. And then I'll scroll down to where I can implement interfaces and look for something called an interaction view host aware interface. And I'll go ahead and click on this. And now we have a few functions. And now we have the set and get interaction target. So I'll go ahead and delete everything over here in the event graph. I'm going to go ahead and create a new function, which is going to be called the set interaction state. And I'm going to go ahead and add an input and call this interaction state. And the type will be the target interaction, the target interaction state, like so. And then I'm going to drag out this node and look for a switch on target interaction state and just connect the interaction state to selection, like so. And I want to go ahead and set visibility and just duplicate this. So I want the choices to be the non-hit testable self and all children and collapse. So none will go over to, everything will go into the bottom except for the started one, which will go into the top one, just like that. Now let's go ahead and hit compile and save. And I also want to go ahead and add another function called set focus state. And I'm going to add the input, which is going to be called focus state. And the type will be the target focus state, like so. And go ahead and hit compile and save. Now I'm just going to drag this node out and look for the switch on target focus state. And go ahead and connect the focus state pin to the selection pin. And I'm going to have that set visibility like so and just duplicate this. The top one I'll leave as collapse and the bottom one I'll leave as non-hit testable self and all children. Let's go ahead and connect none and eligible to the very top one, and then focused will be on the bottom one. So I'll go ahead and hit compile and save. And now I actually need to go back to my designer. And now in the view bindings, I can go ahead and add a widget. And this widget will be the WBP interact, like so. And I can go ahead and look for that set focus state. And I'll go ahead and add another one, which is going to be the set interaction state. And on the right side of the focus state one, I'm going to go ahead and select the view model interaction, select focus state, like so. And then for the set interaction state, I'm going to go ahead and select view model and select the interaction state, like so. Go ahead, hit compile and save. And now when I go back to my BP chest, where it says widget class, I'm going to just select that WBP interact over here. Go ahead and hit compile. And now you're going to see the text is sideways. I'm just going to go ahead and align it however you prefer. Let's actually try to fix this a little bit. Let's see if I can, I'll set the rotation to 90 so it's even with the chest. Try to get it in the middle a little bit, maybe right above it, like so. Go ahead and hit compile and play. And now when my character runs up to the chest, you're going to see the press E to open pop up right in front of it, and it looks a little off-centered, but at least we are able to see the widget in the world space. But at this point in time, clicking E doesn't actually do anything. All we're doing is popping up this widget over here whenever we go near it and telling our character that we can interact with this object. So let's go ahead and fix that. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and create an input, which is going to be an input action called IA_interact. I'm going to go ahead and double click to open this up, leave it as a digital bool. And for the triggers, I will just add a pressed so that it can just register our press event. And then I'll need to add this to our IMC. So I'm going to go back to my abilities. So I'll go back to where my inputs are in the input folder, go over to my IMC default, open my mappings, go ahead and add that IA interact we just created and set the keybind to E like so. And the trigger will just inherit from the input action itself. So we have the pressed over here. And then I want to go to the actual Ninja inputs that we created. So the IS input system underscore gameplay, and go ahead and add an item or an input handler for one that we need is going to be an IA interact. So let's actually create an input handler. So I'm going to right click and I'll just leave this here. Go to Ninja Bear Studio, Ninja Input, and create an input handler. And I will call this input handler Ninja input handler. So NIA underscore interact like so. And now all we need to do is just simply create a handle triggered event, which already comes by default. So you can go ahead and click on this override over here, go to handle triggered event. And now you basically need this to do something, which is going to tell our character or our input system that we can, in fact, interact. So from manager, I'm going to drag it out and get the pawn, and the pawn will get the target of the Ninja input manager component, which is on our character. Then I want to get that interaction manager component like so. And then I'm going to look for a branch. Actually, I'm going to look for, and then I'm going to look for an is valid. And I want to make sure that it does indeed have an interaction manager component. And if this is valid, then we need to have a true and false. So let's go ahead and open this to a branch. And if true, then I want to try to initialize interaction with the current target. And that function will come from the get interaction manager component. So let's try initialize interaction with current target. If it's true, the return node will go as so. I'll go ahead and clean this up in just a second. And if it's false, I want to try cancel current interaction like so. And the tag that we're currently using for the cancel event tag is going to be called interaction.event.canceled button press like so. And we also need a condition for the branch, which simply needs to get the value of our input to convert to a Boolean. So as you can see where I created the IA interact, we have this value type digital bool, which is just going to return a true or false. And in order to get the node that I need to pop up, I'm just going to type in whatever Boolean that you need. So I'll just use like an and bool, drag this value into one of these pins, and then I can go ahead and delete this and bool. And we have this convert input action to bool, which is pretty much just going to determine if we are clicking on this value, or it'll just pass the value of converting the input action value to a Boolean. I'm going to go ahead and click compile and save. And this is all we need for our Ninja input action interact. And I'm going to go back to my input system gameplay, and then under index 3, that new item I created, I'm going to look for that NIA underscore interact. And for the input handler, I'm going to add that input action of IA interact, which is going to be this one over here to tell if we actually clicked it. And then under the trigger event, I'm just going to look for triggered and hit Control S to save. Now it's going to say validating asset. I'm just going to clear it and save it again. And there we go. No errors popped up. So we are good to go. But let's actually make it do something whenever our character does interact with this. So back in my BP chest, I'm going to go ahead and open this up and go to the event graph. And now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just unpin these just so it doesn't get too cluttered in the print screen. And then while the Ninja interaction widget is selected, and while the interaction target component is selected, I'm going to look for on interaction started. In this case, I want to go ahead and print a string which says press E to interact. And let's go ahead and hit compile and save, run up to the chest. So nothing's going to pop up while we're here. And then when I click E, it's going to say press E to interact. So it's registering it. And also our widget is blinking when we do click it. So we know it is successfully working. Now, all I need to do is some pretty simple blueprint of just opening the treasure chest to make it look pretty nice. So let's actually go ahead and simply do that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a static mesh, and I want to add a top chest part because the bottom part isn't really going to move. So I'm only going to be animating the top. And let's go ahead and look for this red chest. I want to look for the top part of the prop chest like so. And by default, I just want to correctly align it with this. I can go ahead and change the box collider if I wanted to, but I think this looks pretty good for now. And I'm going to go ahead and let's see. I want these values to be pretty nice looking. So when I open it, oh, perfect. It's just going to open up like this. So I'm going to copy the, actually it's only rotating. So I only need to copy the rotation of this. So I'll right click and copy the rotation over here. And I'm going to leave this closed. So I'll leave this at 0, 0, 0, like so. So the chest is currently closed. And when it opens, it should go to, I think, is it 120? Negative 120. Okay, perfect. So it'll go to negative 120. So now let's go ahead and go to the event graph. And basically, whenever I start the interaction, I'm going to go ahead and bring that top chest out. So let's go ahead and add a timeline. And I'll just leave the name as timeline, like so. And from my timeline, I'm going to actually pin this to play from start. And then I'm going to open up the timeline, go ahead and add a float track. I'm going to have this be like, let's do 3 seconds. And I'm simply just going to control shift and left click to add a dot, and then shift and left click to add another dot. First one over here, I'm going to put time at 0 and value at 0. So this is just going to determine the start. And I'm not going to do anything too fancy. So the time for this one, I'll do 3 and the value will be 1, which is just going to mean like, okay, we completed this. This is going to be our full sequence in 3 seconds. I'll go ahead and hit compile and save. And now back to the event graph. So it's going to update and we're going to set the relative rotation of this top chest. So I'm going to go ahead and set relative rotation. I'm going to split struct these pins because the only one that I'm going to be rotating is the X over here, which is going to go negative 120 like so. And it's going to take 3 seconds to fully open. And whenever, let's go back to the event graph, new X rotation will be negative 120. And actually, what I want to do from here is down where it says new track, I'm going to look for a lerp, which is going to lerp from our 0 to whatever number we set here. So in this case, it will be 120. But for the timeline itself, I want it to go to the alpha. And this alpha, so basically our 0 to 3 seconds will go from this 0 degree to negative 120. And the return value of that negative 120 will go into our set relative rotation for our top chest because this is the target. So let's actually go ahead and try this out. So very simple. So let's compile and save. Go ahead and I'm going to full screen this because it looks nice. Now when I get the interaction thing, I'm allowed to interact with this and I click E, it's going to take 3 seconds to fully open, maybe a little slow. And when I click E again, it kind of just restarts and I don't want that. So what I'm going to do instead is just go over to my BB chest and I'll go ahead and add a flip-flop over here so that we can open and close the chest, just so it'll look pretty nice. So I'll play from start and then reverse. And now with that flip-flop added, I'm going to go ahead and hit play again. And now we can close and open. So now it opens. And when it's fully open, I'll click it again. And now it's going to close. And then open and close. Open, close, open, close. And yeah, overall, pretty cool. Now let's go ahead and actually, let's attach some animations to my character so it can look like he's going to open a chest, open a door, and so on. And let's go ahead and do that. Actually, before we get into that, let me first show you how to increase your interaction range with this chest. So head over to your BP third person character and we have this. And when we go down to our interaction manager, there is a section that says line of sight. So currently my line of sight distance is set to 200. So let's go ahead and I'll just set this to something crazy like 5,000. Let me go ahead and increase this focus collider by a lot. Let's go ahead and increase the sphere by a good amount. And now when I go ahead and hit play, I think when I look at it from here, yeah, all the way from over here, I can go ahead and open the chest and close it. And this is just if you want to simply increase your interaction range. So I'll go ahead and actually just shrink these back to where it was before. And I'll go ahead and go back to my interaction manager, change my line of sight back to 200, just because I want it to be a little close like that. And now let's go ahead and jump into animations. And now let's actually get into playing animations when we interact with our objects. So I'm going to go ahead and open my smart object or SO_chest. And what I want to do is add a runtime tag. And this runtime tag will be defined in a chooser table, which will associate which animontage to play. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this up and assign it a queue. So it's going to be interaction and the type of interaction will be open. So for the runtime tag, I'm simply just going to select interaction.trait.crouch. And if you don't have this or you want to go ahead and add this, you can click on this plus sign and I'll go ahead and paste that. And the source will be the gameplay tags.ini. Go ahead and add this tag and I'll go ahead and select this. And for my interaction type tag, it's going to be interaction type open, just so I know that my character is going to be opening something. And now I'll go back to my map, and in my folder, in my interaction folder, I'm going to right click and go ahead and I want to create a chooser. So right click, head to animation and look for something called a chooser table. And the chooser type will be the generic chooser. And I'm going to go ahead and leave the result type as object of type. And the result class will be, let's do an anim montage. And I just want to add one parameter, which is going to be a class parameter. And the class itself will be the Ninja Interaction Animation Criteria. And the direction will be input. And I'll go ahead and hit create. And I'll call this something like, let's call this Animation Interaction Player. And now I'll double click to open this up. And now pretty straightforward, I can add a couple of rows and columns. So let's go ahead and add 2 columns. So the first one, I'm going to look for the gameplay tag. And the gameplay tag is going to be the interaction tags, like so. And I'm going to add a second column of gameplay tag again. And we're going to look for the slot tags. And I'm going to add a row. And I'm going to just click asset because the asset that I'm going to be selecting is an anim montage that I need to set up. And I can go ahead and from here, I can select which gameplay tag will be the interaction tag. And on our smart object, our interaction tag is shown here. So it's going to be the interaction.type.open. Then our gameplay tag will be that interaction.trait.crouch that we assigned over here for the runtime tag. So let's go ahead and actually select those. So I'll look for the open for my gameplay tag, and I'll look for the crouch for my gameplay tag under the slot tag. And now I just need to create a pretty simple animation. So for this project, I'm going to be using the Ramsters Animations Loot Anim set. I did buy this. Just for this tutorial. So let's go ahead and just open this up. And now with all my animations imported, I'm going to look for a pickup animation that's going to look like he's opening a chest. So let's go ahead and just type in open. Grab item. Oh, okay, there's an open only right here. Let's go ahead and double click to see what this looks like. So yeah, he's kind of just lifting the chest up like so. So let's actually go ahead and right click on this, go to create, and let's create an anim montage. I'm going to call this am_open chest. And that's pretty much all I need for this one. And now back in my chooser table, I'm going to go ahead and select that animation montage to open chest. And now all I need to do next is add an interaction animation ability, which is going to be a gameplay ability that should be granted by default to the interaction instigator. So I'm going to head back to my map, go over to my interaction folder, right click, and let's look for the blueprint class. I'm going to search for the interaction ability play animation, like so. This is going to be under the gameplay abilities or Ninja interaction gameplay ability. And I'll just call this GA interaction animation. And now when I double click on this, all I need to do is on the right here, there's an animation chooser table. And I'm going to select the animation chooser that we've created. And that's pretty much all I need. So I already have the tag here. This is done by default. We already have our gameplay. We already have our effects class over here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit compile and save. I need to grant this gameplay ability to my gameplay data asset, which is over here. So I'm going to go ahead and add another default gameplay ability and just make sure that in the index we have our gameplay ability interaction animation like so. And another thing that we need to do is actually add the ability. We need to make sure that the interaction animations will be played, and these are usually played from the state tree task. So I'm going to go back and open up the state tree interaction generic, and I want to go ahead and add a state, and this state is going to be called play animation and wait. And I'm going to go ahead and just drag this right above the execute interaction. Go ahead and hit compile, and now let's actually edit the play interaction. So from here, I'm going to add a task. So let's go ahead and click on this plus sign. And we're going to want to add the interaction manager. We're going to want to add the play animation task. And I'm going to bind this interaction manager by go ahead and by coming here, clicking this drop down, clicking Interaction Manager. Now you'll see it pop up on the right. And then I also want to go ahead and click on this plus sign and look for a delay task. And the delay will actually be, so let's change this duration to be the interaction state duration. So whatever duration you set for the interaction itself, for example, over here, I set it to 0 for the duration, it will take place here. So I want to go ahead and add a transition. So the transition, let's go over here and click on this plus sign. And I'm going to change trigger to on tick, and the transition to will be the next selectable state. And I'll go ahead and leave the rest as is. But for condition, we want to go ahead and add a condition, and I'm going to do a float compare. So over here, we have these options which say left and right. For the left, I'm going to look for interaction state duration. And for the left, I'm going to look for interaction state elapsed time. And the right will be interaction state duration. And the operator will be greater or equal to. That's pretty much all we need for our transition. I'm going to go ahead and hit compile and save. And now this looks pretty good to me. Now when I go ahead and hit play, I'm going to be able to see my character play the open animation. And it kind of looks like he's opening the chest, but I can simply just align the animation curve to just match what my character is doing, and also add a close tag or interaction.type.close tag to show him closing the chest instead of opening. That pretty much covers it for the interaction tutorial. Thanks for watching Code of the Row. Like, subscribe, comment what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next video. This was a pretty long one, and I'll be going ahead to actually just split this up into bite-sized contents just to make it easier to watch. So I'll separate a widget one, opening a chest, and so on. Basically everything that I've covered. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until next time.